All right, so welcome to another episode of Loop. I think we're up to it's a brand new podcast, Dave. I'm not sure if you know that or not, but it's new. What I'm trying to do is bring golf stories that people wouldn't necessarily hear about to people. If you look at my channel, you'll see a whole bunch of things from guys that caddy on the Corn Ferry Tour to guys that do the mental side of the game. They work with young golfers. And I kind of went on this spiel talking to you, but before I get going, the Loop podcast today, we have Dave Adamonis from Rhode Island. Um, it's going to be a good episode. It's going to be, if you're a parent or if you're a junior golfer, you're going to want to listen to this because this is good stuff. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it. I'm open to really any questions you have.
Oh boy. But no, so before I want to get into what we were talking about before we came on here, I do want to know about the beginning. I know that Challenge Cup started. So, Dave, you're the chairman. How do you put it?
I'm the executive director of the organization. We're a 501(c)(3). We're set up just like any other golf association is. Almost all of them PGA sections and state golf associations, the USGA. We're all set up under the same tax code. 501(c)(3) nonprofit. And I mean, we're all in it for the betterment of people having the opportunity to go out. We're promoting the game of golf, and our organization started in 1983 when both my brother and I were junior golfers. And my dad had this vision, which back in '83 was it was a lot different than I think most people who processed and played golf. The way they thought of things, and truth be told, back when I was a kid growing up, golf was really a white man's, 35 to say 60-year-old
Yeah.
game. And, it really didn't give opportunities for junior golfers, women, really people from different ethnicity. And my dad felt like, something golf should be about, everybody should have access to the game. Everybody should be able to play this game. There shouldn't be restrictions on the time that you can play the game. And if you speed ahead here to 2026, it's really unbelievable the pioneer and the vision that he had back then. And when he first set out to provide more opportunities for juniors, there were some people that wanted to come along for the ride, but there were a lot of people that were like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, you're stepping out of bounds here," So, but that's really how it all started. We started with we ran one high school tournament when I was a junior player. It's called the Challenge Cup Championship, and we invited 10 teams to a 9-hole course and had this invitational tournament, which kicked off the Rhode Island Interscholastic League high school season. And that's really the genesis of how we got started. My brother at the age of 14 was arguably the best junior golfer in the country. So he honestly didn't really need a local or regional program, but my dad had the goodwill to not only establish and start things with me as a junior, but as my brother was getting older, he's 5 years younger than me, the program just continued to grow. And then when I got out of college, I didn't really know necessarily what I wanted to do. And my dad's like, "Oh, why don't you run this?" And I'm like, "I don't know how I'm going to make a living doing that," right? Because we weren't running any tournaments at the time, but speed ahead to where we are now. We run close to 40 tournaments during the spring, summer, and fall.
Wow. So back in 1983, what did your dad do for a living?
My dad was a high school teacher. He was a teacher, an English teacher at Johnson High School, hockey coach, and just a huge sports enthusiast. And he was a teacher for about close to 30 years. And then he went on to actually start a golf management program at Johnson Wales University in North
Oh,
Miami,
wow.
Florida. They don't have a campus down there anymore, but in 2000, maybe 1999, he actually pitched to the school, "Hey, what do you think about starting a golf management program? You've got a campus in North Miami. It's a great spot for it." And, they told him when he went and made his pitch, "Oh, we really like your idea, but we're not ready for it." So we kind of patted him on the back and said, "Oh, that's not going to happen." Right. And 2 years later, they came calling. And, my dad started a program there. And they started a men's golf team. And in 2005, they won the NAIA championship in 5 years. They put together a team that honestly would have been competitive with top 25 Division I teams. So, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think, I was alive back in the time, as you can tell. I think
Yeah,
what happened was, I think television got a hold of golf. Like, the main, like CBS, the main broadcast companies. And I think they put things on the air like the Skins game. Remember the Skins game back in the late 80s with like Arnold Palmer and Lee Trevino, Jack Nicklaus? They put
yeah.
these things on there. This is pre-Tiger. And I think it kind of, I think it kind of generated interest, and I think, from there, obviously, Tiger came on the scene in the mid 90s.
The two
And
biggest booms for
yeah,
that I've seen, I've been the director of our program since '96, and the two biggest booms that I've seen are Tiger for sure. I don't know that there's been a bigger impact, but believe it or not, COVID came pretty close to second.
yeah,
It was amazing what COVID has did for the game of golf. Golf was in big trouble before COVID. There were, a lot of courses. The business was not good, especially private courses. The business model was not a good model, and COVID COVID really saved golf, in my opinion. I mean, I think there'd still be golf, but not to the degree that it is now.
yeah. So I mean, your dad started it up, and what year did you take it over?
So my dad started in '83. We ran one tournament. I was a freshman in high school when we started it. My team actually, as a freshman, my team ended up winning the first Challenge Cup championship, and my best friend ended up winning the individual title, which is pretty cool. We were both freshmen, so it's
Wow.
kind of a neat thing, to this date. He and I joke back about it, and we only ran one tournament for the first 4 years, and then when my brother, we started to inch towards running some other things, and we started this one developmental piece, which was called the Junior Mini Tour. And that was for kids who were 14 and under. We played at a bunch of 9-hole courses, and we were getting all these kids involved in the game that otherwise wouldn't have had access. And that really kind of, set us up to kind of get bigger and better and to run more events. And, at the time, like an organization like the American Junior Golf Association, they were just founded, so,
Hmm.
my dad probably used a little bit of what his thinking was doing was to create a model similar to what they had, but on a regional basis. And we started off mostly Rhode Island and Southeastern Massachusetts kids, but when I took over, my emphasis was to make this more of a regional program and to offer more events to players and to create a platform for kids. Ultimately, our goal is that kids use our competitive platform to be recognized by college coaches, very similar to what the American Junior Golf Association's credo is, and hopefully go on to play 4 years of college golf. And then, I don't lead parents to believe that they're going to be professional golfers, nor should they even think about it. It's a tough racket, and we can talk about that a little bit when we talk about my brother. But it's great for them to be able to play another 4 years of competitive golf while they're in college, and then ultimately, hopefully, wherever they go, whatever destination they go to, helps them to become successful adults in life. And I stay connected to all of our players. I'm working on a second generation of kids that are playing with us. There's some of the kids that I had when they were 15, 16. They're now 40, 41 years old, and
Wow.
now their kids are starting to, I've got their kids that are starting to play with us. So, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So one of the people that did play in those tournaments was a golfer by the name of Dylan Brown. And one of the things he was telling me, which I don't know if you had this in mind when you first started doing this or not, but he was a Division I player at the University of Maryland, and he was saying that a lot of the golfers, a lot of the coaches, they're recruiting out of the South because obviously you can play golf year round down south. He said, but because of your Challenge Cup and the number of tournaments you have and the quality of golfers that you attract, that all of a sudden the coaches started to pay attention to the Challenge Cup, to those tournaments, and that opened up doors, for the golfers in the New England area that probably wouldn't have had the same opportunities, for Division I schools. Like obviously in the Northeast, there's a big number of Division III course, Division III and Division II colleges, but you're because of your tour, it really opened doors to the Division I, Big Ten, SEC type schools that probably wouldn't have access to if it wasn't for what you did.
I mean, it's nice to hear them give a little bit of credit to us, but and I think if I'm being real, I feel like I don't know that there's a better regional program than the one that I'm, fortunate enough to be running. And part of it is it's a community-based program, right? So we're only as good as the people that support us. And guess what? All the people that used to play with me, right? Those are the people that are running golf courses now, right? And the ones that have experienced our program. So, I can't thank the golfing community enough for what they've helped for my family to be able to build. And really, our emphasis was, my dad's emphasis was he wanted he wanted to create this competitive platform. And our goal is that we wanted kids to become the best that they could be, and that's kind of our credo, really, that we want them to be the best that they can be, not only as golfers, but as people, and we want them to be successful adults, right? I mean, that's kind of what other way to live your life, right, than to pass it along to people. So
Yeah. So along those lines, though, because your tour has become so well known, do you get the call from the college coaches saying, "Hey, which guy should I take a look at here? I'm going to come up and I'm going to be at this tournament or that tournament. Is there anybody that I don't know about that,
I
or does that
mean,
happen?"
I would say this, we've been lucky enough to have a handful of guys at Stanford, guys at Georgia Tech, a handful of guys at Wake Forest. Right now, we've got two players on Vanderbilt's team. Ben James, who goes to Virginia, is looking like he might be our second person to win PGA Tour U, because Michael Thorpe Johnson was one of our former players, and he actually won it. So anytime that you have players that go to those places, it certainly the coaches aren't dummies. They know where the kids came from, right? They ask
Yeah.
them, what's your, they know their background, they know us. My brother has played professional golf his whole life, so a lot of people, when my dad was alive, between my dad, my brother, and I, like, we knew almost every person there was to know in the game of golf, right? And when you're trying to build something like we're trying to build and create opportunities, everything in life is about network, right? So we knew all these people, and they saw what we were doing, and it's been pretty easy when you ask people to do things, for them to come along for the ride. So like I said, we're really fortunate that we have this whole community that supports us. And I probably on an annual basis am talking to 40, 50 coaches, and they're checking in with me and asking me, like, who do we got? Is anybody in the pipeline? And the recruiting is done so early nowadays. Like, they're looking to find out, like, who's an eighth grader that's a good player, like, who's
Yeah.
the seventh or an eighth grader, or a ninth player. Am I a ninth grader? Am I missing anybody? Like, our best players, just even for New England schools that were 2027s, right? Which means they're juniors in high school right now. Those kids already committed back in December to go to school somewhere for, like, the PCs, the URIs, and the Connecticut's of the world, right? So,
Wow.
and those aren't even top 100 schools, I mean, Connecticut and URI sniffed the top 100, and PC just started a program up. So, I mean, it just goes to show you how accelerated the process has become, when it comes to recruiting.
So, like I mentioned before, I used to watch the golf back in the day, and one of the favorite things I used to do was I would look, every week in the Boston Herald, they would have the list of whoever was playing in the tournament, what their scores were and stuff, and I'd be looking for, Brad Fax and Billy Andrade and Brad Adamonis,
Yeah.
and so it was kind of cool that you had these local guys that you could follow along, and your brother Brad had quite a career, huh?
He's still trying to scratch out a career. He's 53 years old, and he has, you know, he's a he has some status on the Champions Tour, but it doesn't get him into any tournaments. It gives him the ability to play in Monday qualifiers and not have to go through a pre-qualifier. And to date, he's played in, I think, about maybe 15 events in the 3 years that he's been on the Champions Tour. But he's a great example for me when I consult with parents just about to try to have them stay grounded about, so here's my brother, Brad Adamonis, and this is what life has looked like for him, right? And, like, it's not what life has looked like for Keegan Bradley, who's one of our former players, right?
Right.
I'm like, I mean, my brother's, if we're being real, he's probably been, considered a journeyman, more years on the Corn Ferry Tour than on the PGA Tour. I mean, he almost won the John Deere, almost beat Kenny Perry at his peak. got beat in the playoff by him at the John Deere, led the tournament from box to wire, tough place to play from, and unfortunately got beat in the playoff. He's had a nice career and he's a great player, but when I look at him, it kind of helps me to just be able to be real with the parents that I talk to and say, listen, I don't want to dash anyone's dream. You should still have your dreams, but the most important factor of this whole process is let's pick a place where you've got a good plan, right? If you think you want to be a golfer, well, what's the plan if you're not a golfer, right? Because for every, Brad Adamonis, who's been able to play golf as a pro for 30 years, like there's a Jim Renner who was a super talent who only got maybe 7 or 8 years. There's a John Curran who was a much better player than Keegan Bradley, right? Those two guys are good friends. He went to Vandy, Keegan's playing at St. John's. John's a better player than him as a junior. In college, that started to turn a little bit. But, John only played for maybe about 3 years, on the PGA Tour level, got beaten a couple playoffs. And then when he got bounced back to the Korn Ferry, wasn't interested in returning there, right? We had Cam Wilson who played for Stanford. He won the NCAA Division One individual championship in 2014 and played professional golf for 2 years and called it a career, right? So for every guy, and those guys, you could argue were better players than my brother as a collegian, right? So for every Keegan Bradley, there's probably like 100 guys around this area that try to make a go of it, and maybe they get to a certain level, and it's hard to retain a card and to make a career out of playing golf. I always say to people, go look at the world ranking from say 2021 and then speed ahead to 2026 and you'll be blown away to see like, whoa, there's not too many names that are
Yeah.
repeat redo, right? And I mean, nowadays we're only 100 guys that keeping a PGA Tour card, and who knows what direction we're going. It might even be less than that, right?
Yeah.
So, one of the best stories I could have when it comes to that whole process is I had this young man, Nick Cummings, who played for BC. And when he was a junior player, his father's like, listen, I want Nick to go to an Ivy League school. He has good enough grades, and I have the money to pay for him to go there. I know there's no scholarships at the Ivy League level. He goes, can we go out to dinner tonight? And we were down at Bethpage. I was running a tournament there, and they were playing in it. And I said, can we go out to dinner tonight? And can you make sure that you nail that down for me? I'm not nailing anything down for you, but I said, I'll talk about the realities of pro golf. And at the time, this was maybe about 7 or 8 years ago. So the environment's gotten a little better because the Korn Ferry, you might be able to like make a little bit of money. But I said to Nick, I'm like, do you know how many players I said worldwide? I said, I'm making over $200,000 a year playing golf. And he said, I have no idea. And I said, it's less than 1,000. And he looked at me and he was like, whoa. And his dad's a periodontist. And I said to him, I said, Jeff, I said, how many people I said I'm making a periodontist and making more than 200,000? He goes,
Hmm.
every single one of us. Right. And that's
Yeah.
millions of people. And I said, so there you have it. Like if you think that you want to play golf, I said, I'm not trying to dissuade you from having a dream. I said, I'm just trying to get you to be a little bit realistic and have some sort of fallback plan because you got to be one of 100, right? And then you got to be one of 100 for a long period of time, right? To maintain having that career, So, I mean, we've had some great players that have come through the program. Megan Kang's our best female and Keegan is
Yeah.
definitely our best male. Um, but it's just for them to play at that level. I mean, that's just amazing for them to have the careers that both of them have had so far. And, looks like Darby Johnson's on course to do something very similar to the two of them. So,
Yeah. I've been following him a lot.
yeah, yeah,
He almost got to the Masters. That was
yeah.
good. Um, you mentioned 200,000 too. I mean, with the expenses that they have to pay, that's like
Ah,
probably
they're
around
gonna,
breaking even,
yeah,
maybe.
they're breaking even, I
Yeah.
mean, PGA Tour, I kind of feel like it's like your number for the week is probably like about 5,000, a Korn Ferry event. I mean, they're not paying entry fees to get in these tournaments, but when you go to a PGA Tour event, you're pretty much staying on, wherever more often than not, you're playing at like a Doral or something like that, right? So there's a host hotel. By the time you get done paying for that, whether it's an Airbnb, you're with your family, you're paying for your caddy, whatever your flights are and stuff like that. That's probably 5G. Corn Ferry might be able to do it a little bit cheaper. You're not paying the caddy as much, and guys on the Corn Ferry, like we just had two guys that earned cards last year through top 20, Davis Chatfield and John Vanderlyn. So those are two of my former guys, and
Wow.
those guys they often would get Airbnbs with four or five other players that are playing on the tour. So they could split costs for the week and stuff like that, but they're still paying probably like 3G a week to play. And if you're playing in, let's say you're playing in 30 tournaments just to make the math easy, that's 90 grand right there.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, forget about Uncle Sam whacking you, right? I mean,
Right.
so and then there's a cost of living too, right? So I mean, what does it cost you to live? Probably like $100,000 nowadays, right?
Yeah. And God forbid you get married and have a kid.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
So
tough way to go for sure. I mean, the
yeah,
people we
yeah.
see on TV are, less than the 1% probably.
Yeah, the people that make it and have those types of careers. It's just it's a I I mean, just think of the other sports, right? Every other sport's a team sport. Maybe tennis is the best parallel to it, but every other sport, like, you think of the NBA, there's 30 teams, I think, right? And
Yeah.
there's probably 20 guys on a roster when it's all said and done. So that's 600 players. The hockey's probably a little bit more than that. Baseball's even bigger than that, and football obviously larger. Like, there's no sport that like you only have 100 people that are playing. I guess if you include live, right? Maybe it's more like 150, right?
Yeah.
154 if we're including live. But it's just a tough racket. And I mean, listen, you have to maintain that level of play, right?
Right.
Because otherwise you don't have a job.
Yeah. No, it's the definition of eat what you kill,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
no
no
one's going to
doubt.
go out and hand anything to you. So when we were talking before we got on, before you started recording here, you mentioned that you were on WEEI for a while, which I didn't know. What
Yeah,
was
a 3 year run. My dad actually had started a golf publication back when he was a high school teacher. He and a guy named Bruce Vittner, they started Ocean State and Bay State Golf, and they actually were, we delivered newspapers to all different golf venues and stuff. I mean, obviously we're in a digital age now, so you
yeah,
would never do that. But they produced for, I don't know, at least like, I don't know, 10, 15 years. They produced Bay State and Ocean State Golf. And we happened to meet Jay because he was producing, something out in Western Mass. And, I actually wrote for the paper and one year when I think we were at the Masters, because one of the cool parts of being a golf writer, if you remember the Golf Writers Association of America, is they will let you attend the Masters on the practice round day, which is an unbelievable experience. So I think I went 7 times,
wow,
as a member. And one year I was down there and I was talking to Jay, and he said, "Hey," he goes, "Bruce is saying that I need to bring you on board. He and I are gonna do a radio show." He goes, "I'm buying the airtime," and he said, "You would be the perfect complement to what we have." I said, "Oh yeah, why is that?" He goes, "Well, you know everybody." Right? So like between the pros and just, all the industry people and whatnot. And I said, sure, I'd be happy to do it. So we had a ball with it. We did it for 3 years, and it was pretty cool the way we formatted it. We always had on like some sort of a tour player, whether it was a PGA tour player, a Korn Ferry player, or somebody from the LPGA tour. We'd have a guest on a weekly basis. Then we'd have a local person on that we kind of did some sort of profile on, or even a golf course. And then we do a round table and stuff just to kind of talk about all different items. So, we had a great time with it. Really enjoyed it. And I do miss doing it a little bit, but there's only so much time in a day.
so switching back to the Challenge Cup, you took it over from your dad. What's
Mhm.
what's the future look like? How long are you going to do this? Like, is it you don't know, or is there like a replacement lined up, or
I'm
what do you
50,
think?
I'm 57,
Okay, that's not old.
and um, I'm going to do this as long as I'm physically able and willing to be able to do it. Um,
Okay,
it definitely needs to be some exit plan, and for us to be able to continue all the goodwill and all the opportunities that we provided. So that's something that I am examining right now. And so for me, this isn't just about the golf, it's about the people. So I'm a big people person. I'm a big circle of life person. I believe that you do good things for other people, and your expectation is that you shouldn't expect for somebody to return that to you. But my belief is that all that comes full circle. And just one quick story I want to tell you, relevant to my dad, was in 2005. My dad became pretty ill with cancer, multiple cancers, and he really needed to have better health care than in Florida. And it just so happened that I was running the Challenge Cup, and my dad was kind of the one person who taught me the credo that I believe in.
Hmm.
And I'm driving him up to Mass General because I got his care transferred to Mass General from a little hospital in Florida. And their doctors were optimistic there. And we're driving, and my father looks at me as we're driving up, and he's like, "Listen," he goes, "you basically have given me this new lease on life." He goes, I was told I wasn't going to be here for a year, any longer than a year. And, now the doctors are optimistic that, that the cancer that I had has been eradicated, and he had lymphoma in addition to the cancer that he had. And he said, they feel like I'll die of something outside of the lymphoma. And he's like, I wouldn't have been here to see your daughter born. He said, I wouldn't have got to see Brad get a PGA Tour card. And I said to my father, I said, "Hey," I said, "can you pull down your visor there?" And he said, and he pulls it down, and I said, "Pop the mirror." And he looks in the mirror, and I says, "You right there are the reason," I said, that you're being cared for in Boston. I said, I said, "All that you always taught me about, do good things for other people, spread goodwill for other people." I said, "It has come full circle." I said, "You're being cared for right now by the best people possibly in the world." I said, "Because I knew the president of the hospital whose son was playing in the Challenge Cup. I knew the chief of pediatrics at Mass General, who had become one of my best friends. And those two guys facilitated his care." So, that's kind of the way that my family and that's a drum that we beat to. Like, I'm sure Dylan will tell you that, I still interact with our players. I've got guys that are, in their mid 40s now, and not just because their kids play with us. Like, I still field phone calls from them. I see how they're doing in life. And, that to me, this is more about life than it is about golf. It just so
Hmm.
happens that golf teaches us so many great lessons, and it gives us an opportunity to meet so many good people and to be part of such a great circle. But I'm really, for me being involved in helping a kid, land a spot for a college team means more to me than calling up Thorby Onsen and saying, "Hey man, great job. Congrats on," I mean, listen, I enjoy that too, but
Yeah.
just as much as the person who, gets the school that they want to go to or lands a job that they were looking to land, you know what I mean? I just, it never ends. Like, I always tell the people who start playing with us with the Challenge Cup, I said it's a for life membership, and that's a beauty of it. And I mean, I think it kind of really echoes golf, right? The people that we meet through golf, I mean, I feel like we stay connected to them for a lifetime, and that's the beauty of the game.
Yeah. So that is an unbelievable story, and obviously, a lot of lessons in there for people that are listening. Um, to be on the Challenge Cup, is it? Do you just sign up for the tournaments? Is it an organization that they become a member of? How does that work?
So, I mean, they are not required to become a member. Our tournaments are in such demand that our members do have first preference to them. So the spring and fall schedule, it's kind of difficult for non-members to access those tournaments. And part of the reason is that our field sizes aren't as big in the spring and fall. They're generally around 100 players, which is still pretty
Wow.
good. But we're dealing with two elements in the spring and fall. There's less daylight, right? And in addition to that, we're playing golf on the weekend because the kids are in school, right? So,
Mhm.
courses definitely are happy to support our program, but they're probably not willing to give up full days worth of golf, right, in order to do it. So, generally in the spring and fall, we're like about 100 players. Every once in a while, we might get to like 120 or 130 players. In the summer, we are running 6 tournaments that are 160 player fields or larger.
Wow.
And we run the Gately Cup at Connecticut National, which brings together pros, junior golfers, and collegians. So they all have separate divisions that they play in. The pros play for a purse. And I call it the world's largest golf party. We're over 200 players every year for that. We're running a split tee. and running two waves and starting at, the crack of dawn. So, that's our biggest number as far, number of players that play in an event. But my belief is that I want to give as many kids access to compete as possible. We could run it less, have fields for less players, but then all these other players don't have an opportunity, and competition is the best way to improve at this game.
So you have different age groups too?
We do. So the girls is generally just because there's not as many girls that will play in our tournaments as so just to kind of give you some background, most of the kids that are coming to us, they have a little bit, they've tipped their toes in the water a little bit and played some form of competitive golf. Nowadays we have for younger kids, you have the PGA Junior League, which is a great way to get started. Almost every club has a junior league team. You have the US Kids, which has probably been around for close to 30 years. They do a phenomenal job. Only thing I don't like about what they do is too much parental involvement. My belief is the sooner that you get kids to cut the cord, come out on a golf course, be responsible to know some of the rules, interact with other people, keep someone's score and your own. Like those are valuable traits to have that are going to translate to you as a person, right? And your maturity and whatnot. So they let the parents caddy a little, I think, for a little too long. But they
Hmm.
run a superb program, and their national championship is something else. So like those are two good entry points for kids. And then everybody has a PGA section, right? And those are more, they run some decent competitive events, but those are more about promotion and getting kids involved. Most of the kids that are coming to us, they're at the very least, they're mostly single digit handicaps when they're starting with us. Many of the kids are, scratch or below. And their emphasis is they have a goal. They want to play college golf, and that's why they come to us. So the kids that are members, they have full access to our tournaments. Every once in a while, even a few members get shut out on like really popular tournaments. But during the summer, we barely shut anybody out just because of the field sizes. And there's days that I'm up at 5:30 in the morning and I'm not getting home from a tournament until like 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. And round two
Wow.
is starting all over again the next day, So um, but it's a labor of love, I really enjoy doing it and meeting the kids, their families, and it's one big family for us out there.
So what do you do in the winter?
Just we get this all set up again when you have 40 tournaments, the winter goes by so fast. Our
Yeah.
schedule starts the third week in March, and we run
Wow.
tournaments all the way up until just before Thanksgiving. We take a group of kids to Doral for the Doral Junior Classic, and we have a team event where Team Florida plays against Team New England there. So like last year, that match is a 12 on 12, but I think last year we sent close to 40 kids to that event. So our season doesn't really end until that tournament's just before Christmas. So that's
Wow.
kind of about when we are shutting things down. And you need a little bit of R&R. I mean, I'm 57. I'm not a young
Yeah.
pup anymore. Um, so it's good to have that January, February to just, set your schedule, reconnect with all the people. You want to maintain relationships with people and communicate with them. So yeah, I'll spend time with a lot of the people who make, our organization a reality. There's a little bit of massaging that goes on with that. So, before you know it, it's March and we're back at it. So,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of downtime.
Is the Hornblower tournament part of your Challenge Cup?
No, no, but the thing is so when I came on board, two things that, I made an emphasis to for us to be able to connect with was I said to my dad, I'm like, listen, I said, why can't we get some kids into the Hornblower, right? I mean, this is back in '96.
Hmm.
And I'm like, and same thing goes for the Francis Ouimet Memorial, right? At the time, the Ouimet wasn't run by Mass Golf. It actually was run by the Ouimet Foundation itself. So fortunately, those guys came along for the ride, and I joke around with the guys from the Hornblower. Mike Roy is one of my former players,
Oh,
and
wow.
and Mike Ellis, who's been the tournament chair. He and I have become pretty friendly with one another. We always send some kids to the tournament. And the joke is they send me back an email. How many players in this field are past players, right? Or current players. And so last year, I think they had a field of like 168 and the number was like 142. So
Wow.
that's the influence,
Yeah.
that it's pretty cool statistic, for us. I mean, biggest statistic for me is we probably average somewhere between 60 and 70 players a year that come through our program that go on to play college golf somewhere. So
That's
that's
amazing.
because that's our goal, right? So that means we have over 200 kids. Every once in a while, kids will decide when they get to college, something, this is a lot. I've done
Yep.
this for a while. I'm going to start looking at internships and stuff, and they might tap out. But
Yeah.
we have over 200 kids annually that are playing college golf somewhere. Um, I'm always scoreboard watching, whether it's at the pro level, it's all the way down the line, from the America's Tour to the Corn Ferry Tour to the PGA Tour, to every college event that's out there in the amateur tournament. But we have a great relationship with the folks at the Hornblower. In my opinion, outside of the Northeast Amateur, it's the next best tournament in New England as far as depth of field. They do a superb
Yeah.
job with the tournament. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Mike's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah, we've had some fun up there.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
So obviously it sounds like you just have not lost any bit of enthusiasm about what you do and how you do it, which is a testament to you. Um, and like you said, you're going to keep doing this until until somebody tells you you can't do it anymore, probably, right?
Yeah, I mean, my daughter's 18 and she's going to college, and I said to her, I said, listen, I said, the most important aspect of enjoying life is finding something that isn't really a job, right?
Yeah.
To me, this isn't really a job. Like I get to have a positive impact on people and be out on a golf course in a lot of different weather conditions, right? Because we start in March, and like the first day that we ran the junior match play qualifier, it was the coldest temperature in the history of me running tournaments,
Wow.
28 degrees
Oh
at
my
the tee
God.
off. There was no frost at 28 degrees.
No kidding.
Yeah, it was crazy. And the wind
Wow.
in the real field, I think, was 21. The kids were looking at me. We had 112 kids playing in a shotgun to
Oh,
qualify for this match play tournament that we run. This was a few weeks ago. And they're like, this is nuts. So, but I told my daughter, I said, listen, I said, it's not really a job. It's probably, I mean, listen, you're doing this now, right? This isn't a job. This is a labor of love, right? You're loving what you're doing with this, right? So, if you can find something like that, then life becomes a lot easier.
yeah, absolutely. I'm going to ask you another thing, and it slipped my 59-year-old brain. um, no, but I appreciate you coming on here, late at night. You're a high school coach. Which high school? Oh, you know what I was going to ask you? I apologize. Do
Yeah.
you golf?
Um, Not very often right now. And the reason being is that I'm coaching a high school team, and this is a good story. One of the kids that plays in my organization, he's an eighth grader, and his name's Rocco Capalbo. His father, Mike, is he's big time into the junior golf scene, and he says to me, he goes, "Listen," he goes, "I think I want Rocco to go to LaSalle Academy." And the Capalbos are members at Shelter Harbor, and they live in Westerly, Rhode Island, so it's at least an hour, right, for Rocco to go to school up at LaSalle. And Steve White does a terrific job. They won 4 state championships in a row at LaSalle. That's who we're hunting at Prout. And I said to him, I'm like, listen, I said, Brendan Ray, who is the head professional at Point Judith, working for Dave Marcotte as a director of golf. I said, he's a coach at Prout. I go, it's 20 minutes away from your house. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
high school golf, I said, while it's part of the equation, I go, it's not a big part of it. I said, why are you gonna make either your wife or you go through until Rocco gets a license, driving back and forth to LaSalle? I said, I said, you'd be better served going to play for him and going to Prout. So Mike says, you're right. He goes, after he thinks about it for a while, he says, you're right. So 2 months after Rocco enrolls at Prout, Ray decides that he's not going to be the coach at Prout anymore. And Mike calls me up and says,
Oh my God.
he's like, I'm devastated. He goes, what's going to happen? He goes, like Rocco had this unbelievable coach, and now there's not going to be a coach. And I actually had been running a dog daycare business that I partnered with some people for about 7 or 8 years. And I decided to step away from being the managing partner of it. And I'm like, I have a little bit more time on my hands. So I felt terrible. I'm like, I said, well, I said, you never know what'll happen, Mike. I said, just give it a few days. I go, maybe something good will come out of it. So I called the school up after I get off the phone with them and I said, listen, I said, I'm interested in coaching the team. And there you have it. Here we are 3 years later. It's my third year coaching. The first year I coached, his son Rocco won the Rhode Island Interscholastic League individual title. And our school, who I don't think anybody thought had any chance of challenging LaSalle, we came in second place as a runner-ups, which I mean, I think my kids outside of Rocco probably felt like that was a major accomplishment. So I've had a lot of fun with it. I mean, just like I do like the competitive aspect of it. And I think in life it's important to try to be the best you can be and strive to improve and to get better and to be the best you can be because it's a great journey to be on. It's healthy, you know what I mean? And my goals are for us to win a state title, but there's so many more lessons that the kids can learn, you know what I mean, from me than the wins and losses. So, it's really kind of a perfect offshoot for what I do, you know what I mean, with the Challenge Cup. So,
Yeah.
so I'm
Wow.
having a lot of fun with it.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
You reminded me of something though. I went to URI. I graduated in '88.
Yeah.
And back when I went to URI, all you need to do was sign up for the golf team, the Division I golf team. You sign up and you go play at Point Judith, one of the most beautiful golf courses I've ever been on.
Yeah.
I'm just some stiff that she said, yeah, I like to play a little golf. So I signed up for the team and you go down and you play and you submit your scores every week. And he took like the top, whatever, 6 or 7 guys that go in a tournament. I
Yeah.
never, I never went into a tournament, but that's how easy it was to play golf, back then, as
Yeah.
opposed to now where, if you're not scratch, you're not even sniffing that team, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Greg Burke's done a terrific job. I mean, listen, Tom Drennan was there before Greg, and he really built URI into to a recognizable program. And after Tom, built this excellent program, Greg's come in and he has a team that I think has a shot at qualifying for NCAA's this year, which is
Wow.
pretty difficult for the teams from around this area.
Yeah.
Nice collection of players, and many of the players. Listen, I mean, most of the rosters around here are chock full of Challenge Cup players. So, so that I'm always interested in seeing how the lads do.
Hey, Dave, I appreciate you coming on here at 8:15 at night. We talked for a while. This has been just one of my favorites. I gotta be honest with you.
I've got a beautiful story for you that
Oh,
I'm sure your
feel
audience
free,
will
please.
enjoy. All right, this is one of my best stories. So the opportunities I had to go to the Masters, Golf Raid has always hosted a dinner on the night before. Not the Champions dinner's on a Tuesday, but the Golf Raid has hosted a dinner on the Wednesday. And typically, the champion from the previous year will pop into the dinner and he'll say a few words and then he'll dash out of there. And so one of the years that I was there, he told a story that Mark O'Mara got up and he told us a story that is one of the most beautiful stories I've ever heard in golf. He was friendly with Woods, right, as we know. And
Yeah.
so he said when Tiger was at Stanford, he said he was working diligently in a what do they call the lecture hall, right? There was a lecture hall exam at Stanford. There's like 400 kids in the lecture hall, and it's a timed exam. And so Woods is sitting there, he's working diligently, and all of a sudden the alarm goes off for the time exam. And Woods is still cracking away, seeing the kids walking down, and the professor's sitting way across the room. He's sitting, not near the door. He's sitting on the opposite side of the room, and he says to Woods, "Excuse me, son." He said, "But he goes, what do you think you're doing?" And he says, I'm turning in my exam." And he says, he goes, "No, I don't think so." He goes, "This was a time exam." And so Woods' response to him is he goes, "Do you know who I am?" Right? And most people thinking that Woods is going to pull a power play on him. And the guy says to him, "Son, I don't have the foggiest as to who you are." Woods dashes down to the pile of exams, stuffs his exam in the middle of exams, and says, "That's great. Have a nice day." And he leaves the room. So most people would think like this story is going to be like, "Hey, I'm Tiger Woods," right?
Yeah.
And the guy didn't know who he was, so he was able to still. Now we don't know if O'Mara was pulling our leg and telling us a concocted story, but we thought it was pretty amusing, because most people would think, "Hey, that's Tiger Woods. Like Tiger Woods is going to get taken care of," but the guy had no
Right.
idea who he was, and he was able to slide that exam in the pile of exams, and I'm sure I guess it was pointless, right? Because he turned pro before he actually graduated, and they ended up giving him a degree at some point, right?
Oh, they did? I didn't even know
Yeah,
that.
I'm sure. But
Yeah, that's awesome. I
listen,
mean, just
anytime that you'd, if you're looking to have me back on, I've got some other good stuff we can talk about. But
oh, I would love that.
feel
The
free.
other thing I'm trying to figure out too is like I would love to talk to some of your players. 'Cause what I'm thinking is in my head, I'm thinking if I could have some players on here that like are looking at schools, and I had just interviewing them and stuff like that, and we could send that to schools. You know what I mean?
Oh
Just to
yeah,
get an idea of have the coaches, because coaches look for more than just what you're doing on the golf course. You know what I mean? They
yeah.
want to know, how does he carry himself? How do they articulate? How do they?
Well, the best story I can tell about Jerry Haas, who's the coach at Wake Forest, is if he was going to come out to do an evaluation, he wasn't out to evaluate your ability level because he already knew how good you were, right? He had a whole checklist and they had zero to do with golf. Like, how do you interact with your playing partners? How do you interact? How do you react when you hit a bad shot? If your parents are there, like what does that vibe look like? So he was looking at all these peripheral things, just to see how you either reacted or acted, right? And that was his checklist because, like, just think about it. There's 50 guys that he could choose from to go to Wake, right? And you don't think it's that important to have a cohesive group of guys because they're all playing an individual round of golf. But the truth of the matter, it is no matter what you do, if it's a team sport, you're traveling on the road,
Yeah,
you need that cohesion, you know what I mean, in order to be successful. And so I found that interesting, when I would talk to him. One of the parents of one of our players, his kid ended up going there, and his name was Danny Geis. And his dad told me, he says, he said, he called me up and he says, Danny passed the test. I go, what did he shoot? He goes, oh, it doesn't matter what you shoot. He goes, Danny passed the test. He goes, because coach told us, this is what he's looking for. So, there's definitely some truth to what you're saying as far as that goes.
yeah, yeah. I'll definitely be reaching out this summer. I'm looking forward to the summer. There's a lot of good stuff going on, and just getting to know you right now. I'll definitely have a special eye out to see what's going on in those tournaments, and I'll give you a ring, and I'll say, hey, let's talk to this guy, or I'll have you back on to talk about what you're doing, and we'll go from there. But I really appreciate you coming on.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm looking forward to starting to have your podcast in my library so I have something good to listen to when I've got a 2 hour ride to Winterberry Hills in Bloomfield, Connecticut.
I appreciate that. Well, thanks for coming, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Be
So, as you can tell, I mean, a guy like that is just a pleasure to talk to because he just absolutely loves what he does. He makes a big difference in a lot of people's lives, and it's just a joy just to see a guy like his. Every waking moment is to try to help other people, and it's just a real special thing. I felt blessed to talk to him. So those are the kind of stories that you're going to get on the loop, and I'd love you to subscribe because I think that it's just going to keep getting better and better and better. Thanks, everyone, and we'll talk to you next time.